Namaskar students, welcome to Headlines of the Day. In this video, we are going to discuss important headlines of the Hindu newspaper dated 6th August 2022 of Delhi edition, right? Our first important headline is RBI raises rates, vows nimble policy. Available on page number 1 related to paper 3 economy section. In this article, we have to know about the highlights of RBI's fourth monetary policy review of fiscal year 2022-23 and rationale behind the recent moves. So recently क्या हुआ है कि RBI has decided to raise policy repo rate by 50 basis points to 5.4%. Right? It retained its inflation and GDP growth projections for the current fiscal year ending in March 2023 at 6.7% and 7.2%. Right? The standing deposit facility rate stands adjusted to 5.15% and marginal standing facility rate and bank rate to 5.6%. क्यों क्या किया गया ये सब? Why these decisions were taken? They are aimed to contain inflationary pressures, right? Our next important headline is Supreme Court moots verdict for bodily autonomy. Available on page number 1 related to paper 2 Polity and Governance section. In this article, we have to know about the Supreme Court's recent observations on termination of pregnancies and we have to learn about the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. तो अगर हम ओवरव्यू की बात करें तो मेडिकल टर्मिनेशन ऑफ प्रेगनेंसी एक्ट ऑफ 1971 and its rules of 2003 prohibit unmarried women who were between 20 weeks to 24 weeks pregnant to abort with the help of registered medical practitioners. However, rule permits termination of pregnancies up to 24 weeks in 7 specific categories. कौन सी हैं वो categories? Survivors of rape, sexual assault, minors in case of physical disabilities, and fetal malformation. These 7 categories represent women who were extremely vulnerable, right? But recently, court observed that an unmarried woman whose pregnancy is over 20 weeks may have also conceived in a similar vulnerable situation. The source of her pregnancy may also be the same vulnerability that applies to other women, as medical risk is the same for both married and unmarried women, right? Our next important headline is Lessons for India from Taiwan standoff. Available on page number 6 related to paper 2 international relations. In this article, we have to know what are the causes of recent crisis between China and Taiwan, major implications, important lessons for India from this standoff and what lies ahead. अगर हम recent causes की बात करें तो मेजर जो इसका cause है वो recent visit by United States House Speaker to Taiwan है, right? And it has a potential to increase the already deteriorating relationship between the US and China with major implications for Taiwan. कौन से lessons हैं जो India should take from these standoff? The most important lesson for the Taiwan standoff for policymakers in India is importance of articulating the red lines and sovereign positions in unambiguous manner, and India needs to unambiguously highlight the threat from China and sources for such threat. Any absence of such clarity will be cleverly utilized by China to push India limits, as we have already seen. क्योंकि हम देख सकते हैं कि ताइवान, a small island of only 23 million people, has decided to stand up to one of the strongest military and economic power on the planet. India is far more powerful nation armed with a nuclear weapon with 1.4 million standing military. Yet India continues to be hesitant about calling China's bluff. According to writer, if India does not clearly articulate that China is in illegal occupation of its territory, how can it expect its friends in the international community to support India diplomatically or otherwise? In other words, India's current policy of hide and seek amounts to poor messaging and confusing to its own people as well as larger international community. It is therefore counterproductive. Last but not the least, according to writer, India for sure should do business with China, but not on China's own terms, right? Our next important headline is Addressing the Challenges in New Age Digital Commerce. Available on page number 6 related to paper 2 Government Policies and Interventions. This article is totally based on Open Network for Digital Commerce, also known as ONDC, and why was it needed, right? तो अगर हम ONDC की बात करें तो it was established by Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade to level the playing field by developing an open e-commerce and enabling access to small businesses and dealers. Objectives की बात करें कि क्यों इसको लाया गया था? ONDC network makes it possible for products and services from all participating e-commerce platform to be displayed in search results across all network apps. For example, a consumer shopping for a product on an e-commerce app named X would also receive result from the e-commerce app named Y if both X and Y integrated their platform with O and DC, right? This achieves the dual objective. कौन से हैं वो? Of wider choice for consumers on the one hand and access to wider consumer base for sellers on the other, right? If you want to know more about open network for digital commerce, a link is available in the description, right? Our next important headline is sticking to commitments, available on page number 6 related to paper 3, environment. In this article we have to know India's updated nationally determined contributions and their objectives. तो recently क्या हुआ है कि Union Cabinet has approved India's updated nationally determined contributions and it aims to enhance India's contribution towards achievement of strengthening of global responses to the threat of climate change as agreed under the Paris Agreement. Earlier, India submitted its intended nationally determined contribution to UN FCCC in 2015, right? अगर हम 2015 वाले NDC की बात करें तो it comprise 8 goals. 3 of these have quantitative targets up to 2030, namely cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuels sources to reach 40% and reduce emissions intensity of GDP by 33 to 35% compared to 2005 levels and creation of additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent through additional forest and tree cover. As per updated NDC, India now stands committed to reduce emissions intensity of its GDP by 45% by 2030 from 2005 level and achieve about 50% cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuels based energy sources by 2030. Significance क्या है these moves की? These actions will help India usher in low emissions growth pathways. It would protect the interest of the country and safeguard its future development and needs based on the principles and provisions of UNFCCC. The update also stepped towards achieving India's long-term goal of reaching net zero by 2070. The decision on enhanced NDC demonstrates India's commitment at the highest level for decoupling of economic growth from the greenhouse gas emissions. राइट अगर हम थोड़ा एडिशनल इन्फॉर्मेशन की बात करें जो कि इसमें मेंशन था पेरिस एग्रीमेंट के बारे में, तो पेरिस एग्रीमेंट रिक्वायर्स कंट्री टू स्पेल आउट पाथवेज टू इंश्योर द ग्लोब डज नॉट हीट बियॉन्ड 2 डिग्री सेल्सियस एंड एंडेवर टू कीप इट बिलो 1.5 degree Celsius by 2100, right? Our next important headline is privileges of MP does not extend to criminal cases, says Venkaiah. Available on page number 8, related to paper 2, Polity and Governance section. In this article, we have to know what are the parliamentary privileges and constitutional provisions related to them. तो recently M वेंकैया नायडू जो कि चेयरमैन है राज्यसभा के, उन्होंने कहा है कि नो मेंबर should avoid appearing before any investigating agency when she or he is called upon to do so by citing reasons of house of duty. As lawmaker, it is our bounden duty to respect the law and legal procedures. तो अगर हम parliamentary privileges की बारे में बात करें तो parliamentary privileges are certain rights and immunities enjoyed by the members of parliament individually and collectively so that they can effectively discharge their functions. अगर हम constitutional provisions की बात करें तो under article 105 of the Indian Constitutions, MPs enjoy certain privileges so that they can perform their parliamentary duties without let or hindrances, right? However, MPs did not have immunity from being arrested in criminal cases during session or otherwise. There have been number of ruling by the presiding officers in this context, right? So that's all we have in today's discussion. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.